There is a season in life when God allows His chosen ones to walk alone. Not because they are rejected, not because they are forgotten, but because they are being prepared. Many people misunderstand loneliness. They think it is punishment, failure, or loss. But in God's kingdom, separation often comes before elevation. When God wants to do something extraordinary through your life, He first draws you away from the noise, the crowd, and even familiar voices. The chosen ones often feel different from an early age. They may love people deeply, yet still feel misunderstood. They may serve faithfully, yet remain unseen. This is not accidental. God isolates before He anoints. Just as gold is refined in fire and diamonds are formed under pressure, spiritual strength is developed in solitude. In silence, God speaks more clearly. In isolation, His voice becomes louder than human opinion. When you walk alone, God removes your dependence on people so you can learn dependence on Him. If everyone supports you, praises you, and understands you, you may never seek God deeply. But when doors close, when friends disappear, when even family does not understand your calling, you are driven to your knees. And on your knees, you discover a power that crowds can never give you. This is where faith becomes real, not borrowed, not inherited, but personal. Many chosen ones are misunderstood because they carry vision before manifestation. You see what others cannot yet see. You feel a burden others do not feel. That creates distance. People may label you strange, proud, or distant, but in reality, you are being aligned with heaven. God often hides His servants before He reveals them. Moses lived in the desert before leading a nation. Joseph sat in prison before standing in a palace. Jesus withdrew to lonely places before stepping into public ministry. Solitude is not delay, it is divine timing. Walking alone also protects you. Not everyone who smiles at you can walk with you. Some people would slow you down, distract you, or contaminate your purpose. God loves you too much to allow premature connections to destroy future destiny. So He filters your circle. It hurts, but it heals. It feels empty, but it is making space for something greater. God is not taking people away to punish you. He is removing weights so you can run faster. In loneliness, character is built. When no one is watching, your integrity grows. When applause is absent, humility is formed. When encouragement is scarce, perseverance is developed. God is more interested in who you become than how fast you arrive. The chosen ones walk alone because God is shaping them into vessels that can carry glory without breaking, blessing without pride, and authority without corruption. Do not mistake isolation for abandonment. God is closer than you think. When people step back, heaven steps forward. When human voices grow silent, the Spirit begins to whisper. This is where healing happens. This is where old wounds are exposed and restored. This is where fear is replaced with faith. This is where you learn to hear God for yourself, not through others, but directly from His heart. One day this season will make sense. The loneliness will turn into leadership. The tears will turn into testimony. The silence will turn into influence. People will ask how you became so strong, so peaceful, so focused, and they will not know that strength was born in the moments when you stood alone with God. If you are walking alone today, do not rush the process. Do not beg people to stay. Do not question your worth. Lift your eyes and understand this hidden reason. God is preparing you for something that requires depth, maturity, and unshakable faith. You are not alone by accident. You are alone by divine design. Chosen ones are often separated early in life because God prepares them differently before public purpose is revealed. From the very beginning, there is a sense of being set apart that cannot be explained in human terms. While others seem to fit naturally into groups, systems, or expectations, the chosen often feel out of place. This separation is not rejection, it is selection. God marks His servants long before He announces them. He begins His work in the hidden places, away from applause, so that identity is formed in Him and not in recognition. Early separation protects the calling from contamination. If a chosen person grows up depending on approval, popularity, or constant validation, the future assignment becomes dangerous. Pride can grow easily where praise is frequent. That is why God allows seasons where the chosen are overlooked, misunderstood, or even ignored. In those moments, the heart is trained to seek God alone. Faith becomes rooted, not in outcomes, but in trust. Obedience becomes a lifestyle, not a performance. This early isolation also awakens spiritual sensitivity. The chosen ones begin to notice things others ignore. They feel burdens others dismiss. They sense God's movements before they are visible. This often makes them seem different, intense, or overly serious, but it is because their spirit is being tuned. God is sharpening perception in secret, so discernment will function accurately in public. Vision is born in solitude before it is released in leadership. Many struggle with this stage because they do not understand it. They compare themselves with others who appear to advance faster, connect easier, or succeed sooner. But God is not in a hurry with those He plans to use greatly. He delays exposure to deepen foundation. He slows the process to strengthen the vessel. What looks like isolation is actually alignment. What feels like delay is divine training. When the time comes for public purpose to be revealed, the chosen will not be shaken by crowds, criticism, or success, because their roots were planted deeply in God long before anyone knew their name. Walking alone develops deep dependence on God rather than reliance on people or applause. When familiar support systems are removed, the heart is forced to look upward instead of outward. At first, this feels uncomfortable and even painful because human nature desires affirmation, encouragement, and companionship. But God, in His wisdom, allows this stripping process so faith can mature. When people are always present, it is easy to lean on their strength, their advice, or their approval. When they step away, God invites the chosen one into a deeper, more personal relationship with Him. In this season, prayer changes. It is no longer routine or religious. It becomes survival. The chosen begin to speak honestly with God, not with polished words, but with raw dependence. Scriptures come alive because they are no longer read for knowledge, but for life. Every promise becomes something to hold on to in the absence of visible support. This is how trust is formed, not when everything is provided, but when God is the only option left. Dependence on God also reshapes confidence. Instead of being strengthened by applause or weakened by criticism, the chosen learn to stand firm regardless of human response. When praise is absent, obedience remains. When recognition is delayed, faith does not collapse. God becomes the source of validation, peace, and direction. This produces stability that cannot be shaken by changing circumstances. As dependence grows, fear begins to lose its power. When people are no longer the source of security, their opinions lose control. The chosen become free from pleasing others, free from comparison, free from the need to be understood. This freedom creates boldness because courage rooted in God is not fragile. It does not break under pressure or bend under rejection. What feels like loneliness is actually intimacy. God draws the chosen close, teaching them how to rely on His presence, His timing, and His strength. When they eventually step into public purpose, they carry an unshakable assurance. They know that if God sustained them in isolation, He will sustain them in abundance. Isolation sharpens spiritual hearing, allowing God's voice to become clearer than human opinions. In a noisy world filled with advice, criticism, expectations, and constant information, it is difficult to discern what God is truly saying. That is why God often leads the chosen into quiet seasons where external voices are reduced. When distractions are removed, the soul becomes still, and in stillness, clarity is born. God does not compete with noise. He waits for silence. In isolation, the chosen learn the difference between emotional impulses and divine instruction. Without the pressure of pleasing people or following popular opinions, they begin to recognize how God speaks to them personally. His guidance becomes more precise, more intimate, and more consistent. Decisions are no longer made based on fear of rejection or desire for approval, but on inner conviction shaped by prayer and reflection. This is how spiritual discernment is developed. Human voices often confuse calling. Well-meaning people can discourage what God has ordained simply because they cannot see what He has revealed. Isolation protects the chosen from premature advice that could derail obedience. When God is the primary voice, direction becomes steady even when circumstances are unstable. The chosen learn to move by faith, not by consensus. As spiritual hearing sharpens, sensitivity to God's timing increases. The chosen learn when to act and when to wait. They understand that silence from God is not absence, but instruction to remain still. This level of awareness cannot be learned in crowds. It is cultivated in quiet obedience. Over time, confidence in hearing God grows, reducing doubt and hesitation. When the chosen eventually re-enter public spaces, they are no longer controlled by public opinion. They can stand firm amid criticism, pressure, and misunderstanding because their foundation is not external affirmation, but internal alignment. Isolation trained their ears to recognize God's voice above all others, and that clarity becomes a lifelong anchor, guiding them through every season with peace and authority. God removes certain relationships to protect destiny and prevent distraction, delay, or destruction. This separation is often one of the most painful parts of the journey because it involves people the chosen once trusted, loved, or depended on. When connections break without clear explanation, the heart struggles to understand why. Yet God, who sees the end from the beginning, knows which relationships can handle the weight of the calling and which cannot. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into your future. Some relationships are good but not aligned. They may offer comfort, familiarity, or emotional support, yet still pull you away from obedience. Others may carry jealousy, limitation, or misunderstanding that slowly weakens faith. God removes these connections not out of cruelty, but out of care. He knows that certain voices would question what He has commanded, dilute vision, or pressure compromise. Separation becomes protection. This process exposes misplaced attachments. When God removes people, He reveals where identity and security were incorrectly rooted. If peace disappears when someone leaves, it shows how much reliance existed. God gently but firmly recenters the heart, teaching the chosen to anchor their worth in Him alone. This purification is necessary because destiny requires emotional freedom. A heart bound by unhealthy connections cannot move boldly in obedience. Relationship pruning also creates room for growth. When old connections end, space is created for divine assignments, new levels of responsibility, and future relationships aligned with purpose. God never removes without intention. What He takes away cannot compare to what He prepares ahead. The silence left behind becomes a place where strength develops and clarity increases. Though the pain feels personal, it is spiritual. God is shielding the chosen from delays they cannot yet see and battles they are not meant to fight. What feels like loss is actually rescue. When the time is right, the chosen will look back and understand that God was not breaking relationships to hurt them. He was preserving their destiny, guarding their focus, and ensuring they arrived whole, free, and prepared for what He had promised. Expand fifth key point without subheading and conclusion in 300 words. Solitude builds character, humility, and inner strength that cannot be formed in crowds. When no one is watching, the true condition of the heart is revealed. In public spaces, it is easy to perform, to adjust behavior for approval, or to hide weakness behind activity. But in solitude, there are no masks. The chosen are confronted with their thoughts, motives, and insecurities. This honest exposure is where God begins His deepest work. Character is shaped when obedience continues without recognition. In solitude, there is no applause to motivate faithfulness, no platform to reward effort. Choices are made purely out of reverence for God. Integrity grows when doing the right thing brings no immediate benefit. These unseen decisions become the foundation of future authority. God entrusts influence only to those who have proven they can be faithful without attention. Humility is also formed in loneliness. When success is delayed and recognition is absent, pride loses its grip. The chosen learn that their value does not come from titles, numbers, or achievements, but from being known by God. This humility is not weakness, it is strength under control. It allows the chosen to carry blessing without becoming self-centered and to lead without dominating others. Inner strength develops through endurance. Solitude tests patience, emotional stability, and perseverance. When encouragement is scarce, the chosen learn to encourage themselves in God. When answers are delayed, they learn to wait without quitting. This resilience cannot be taught. It is learned through experience. Every lonely season strengthens spiritual muscles that will later sustain leadership under pressure. What appears to be emptiness is actually construction. God is building a foundation deep enough to support future weight. Without solitude, success would collapse the soul. With it, the chosen emerge grounded, steady, and mature. The strength formed in isolation becomes the quiet confidence that allows them to stand firm, serve faithfully, and remain unshaken when crowds eventually return. Loneliness is not abandonment, but divine preparation that leads to future authority, influence, and impact. When the chosen find themselves alone, the enemy often whispers that they have been forgotten. But God's silence is never neglect, it is strategy. In these quiet seasons, God is working beneath the surface, shaping capacity before releasing responsibility. Authority is not given suddenly. It is built slowly in hidden places. Loneliness trains the chosen to carry weight without collapsing. Leadership requires emotional strength, spiritual maturity, and clarity of purpose. These qualities are not formed in comfort, but in waiting. When there is no one to affirm progress, the chosen learn to trust God's process rather than visible results. This patience becomes essential later when decisions affect many lives and pressure increases. In solitude, God entrusts revelation before recognition. He shares understanding, wisdom, and vision privately so pride does not corrupt it publicly. The chosen learn to steward insight quietly without rushing to announce it. This discipline prepares them to handle influence responsibly when the time comes. What is received in secret becomes powerful when released in season. Loneliness also produces authority through obedience. When no audience exists, obedience becomes pure. The chosen follow God because He is God, not because obedience brings reward. This purity of motive establishes spiritual authority that cannot be challenged by opposition. People may resist position, but they cannot deny true authority rooted in faithfulness. When God finally brings the chosen into visible impact, the loneliness they endured becomes their strength. They lead with compassion because they understand pain. They speak with conviction because they have wrestled with doubt. They carry influence without arrogance because they remember hidden seasons. What once felt like emptiness becomes overflow. The preparation was necessary so the chosen could stand firmly, lead wisely, and impact lives without losing themselves.